The Grand Council Hall floated in the middle of space, far from any planet, like a crown of silver and crystal. Its towers shone with 1,000 colors, each one representing a different world in the Galactic Alliance. Inside, the great chamber was full of life. Voices of 100 alien species echoed together, deep rumbles, high-pitched clicks, strange musical tones. The air shimmered with heat from the energy shields that kept the hall sealed from the vacuum outside. At the center of the chamber stood the Circle of Law, a ring of white stone, older than the Alliance itself. Here, every great decision was made. And here, one law ruled above all others, the POX, CONCORDIA. Council leader Vera, a tall insectoid with wings like glass, raised her hand. At once the noise in the hall fell to silence. Her voice rang out clear and sharp. The Pax Concordia remains absolute, she said. No member of the Alliance shall wage war against another. Any who break this law will be exiled, cut off from trade, and hunted until no trace remains. Around the circle, ambassadors from dozens of species bowed their heads in agreement. Some muttered prayers. Others tapped their claws on the floor in approval. The law had kept the stars free of war for almost 200 years. Too many. It was sacred. But one person did not bow. Captain Mara Keen of Earth stood straight in her seat at the human delegation table. Her black uniform was spotless, her shoulders square. She had been in the Alliance for only 30 years, but she knew enough to see the truth. Peace had made the great powers slow and blind. In her wrist display, a message glowed. It was only 2 lines long, but it had burned into her mind since. She had read it. Human colony Arcadia destroyed. No survivors. Evidence points to the Dralketh Dominion. She had brought this to the Council's attention only an hour ago. She had shown the sensor records, the distress signal cut short, the wreckage, floating in space. She had spoken of the children who had lived there, the families who had worked the land and built the homes. The Drelketh ambassador had smiled, a slow, cold, three-mouthed smile, and denied everything. Fabrications, he had said, in a voice like wet stone. The council had listened to both sides, then closed the matter. Without proof acceptable under the Pax Concordia, they would not act. The law against war was stronger than the lives of the dead. Now, as the meeting ended, Mara's hands clenched at her sides. Her jaw was tight, but her eyes gave away nothing. In the shadowed corridor outside the chamber, Commander Jonah Rios caught up to her. His steps were quick, his voice sharp with anger. "They're not going to move," he said. "They'll let the Drelketh walk away from this, just like that." "They don't see it as just like that," Mara said, quietly. "They see it as peace." Jonah stared at her. "Peace? They murdered 12,000 people. Our people. That's not peace, Mara. That's fear." Mara stopped walking. The corridor's pale lights caught the edge of her face. For a moment, she said nothing. Then her voice dropped low. "They think we will obey," she said. "They think humans can be tamed by their laws. They think we're too young, too small to make them afraid." Jonah gave a bitter laugh. "And they've banned war. So what are you thinking? We just sit here." Her eyes turned toward him, dark and steady. "No, we don't give them a war." "Then what?" She cut him off. "We give them something worse." Jonah frowned, his mind trying to catch up. "Worse. The Pax Concordia only forbids war," Mara said. "It says nothing about other measures." There was silence between them for a moment. Far down the corridor, a group of Valry diplomats passed, their long silver cloaks brushing the floor. The sound of their whispering voices faded into the distance. Mara turned back toward the human wing of the station. Her steps were slow, but sure. Jonah followed, his heart pounding. "What are you planning?" he asked finally. Mara didn't look at him. "Something the Drelketh won't understand, until it's too late. Something the council will have no words for." Her mind was already moving ahead, piece by piece, building a plan. The Drelketh thought they had silenced humanity by hiding behind the law. The Council thought they had given Earth no choice but to obey. They were all wrong. When Mara finally reached the human command office, she locked the door behind her and stood in the dim light. She thought of Arcadia, of its green fields and quiet lakes, of the market square filled with voices and laughter. She thought of the people there, her people, now gone. She thought of the Drelketh smile. Her hand touched the comms panel. "Get me Admiral Harlow," she said. "Secure channel. Tell him this is about Project Eclipse." Jonah froze. Project Eclipse. I know what it is, Mara said. Her voice was cold, her eyes sharper than steel. "And I think it's time we finished it." No one outside a handful of humans knew what Project Eclipse was. Even in the Alliance's vast intelligence networks, it was just a shadow, a name, whispered in old files, a rumor never confirmed. But Jonah knew, and as the thought formed, he felt a shiver run down his spine. "Mara," he said quietly, "if we do this, there's no going back." She looked at him, and for the first time, since they'd left the chamber, she smiled. It was a small, fierce smile. "That's the point." The human command office on the station was quiet, except for the soft hum of power lines in the walls. Captain Mara Keen stood over the holographic table, watching a map of Alliance space spin slowly before her. Thin blue lines marked trade routes, green circles marked protected worlds, and red zones pulsed where the Drelketh held control. Admiral Harlow's voice came through the secure channel, deep and heavy. "I assume you have a reason for using the Eclipse clearance, Captain?" Mara kept her eyes on the map. "Arcadia's gone. Drelketh did it. The Council won't act." There was silence on the line for a long moment. "I see," Harlow said. Finally, his voice had no anger in it, but it was colder than space itself. "And you want to use Eclipse as retaliation?" "Not retaliation," Mara said. "Correction." Commander Jonah Rios stood at the edge of the table, arms crossed. He could hear every word, and every part of him wanted to speak, to tell Harlow this was madness, but he didn't. Harlow's voice lowered. "You know why Eclipse exists. It's not a weapon. It's a pressure point, a way to make the enemy collapse without a battle. It's dangerous because it works. That's why I want it," Mara said. "They think the Pax Concordia protects them. It doesn't protect their supply lines. It doesn't protect their secrets. It doesn't protect the trust their allies have in them." On the hologram, she tapped a red zone. The display zoomed in to show a cluster of systems deep inside Drelketh space. "Here," she said, "this is their grain belt. It feeds half their population. They've hidden its exact location for decades, but our probes mapped it last." "Yeah," Jonah's eyes widened. "You're talking about cutting off food to billions. That's not war," Mara said sharply. "We're not firing a shot at their fleets. We're not invading their planets. We'll make the routes unsafe, force them to defend everything at once. Force their allies to question their strength." Harlow's voice rumbled again. "And if they trace it to us, they won't," Mara said. "We'll make it look like 100 small enemies. Pirates, mercenaries, raiders. We'll use fake signals, false trails, even fake wreckage. It'll be chaos they can't name." Jonah stepped closer, his voice low. "Mara, this is worse than war. War has rules. This doesn't." She looked at him then, her eyes steady. "Exactly." 3 days later, the human strike teams left the station in disguised freighters. Their ships carried no flags, no Alliance markings. Some looked like old mining craft, others like cargo haulers patched together from scrap. Inside each, elite crews worked in silence. The first target was a refueling outpost in deep space. It was guarded only by a handful of Drelketh patrol drones. In less than an hour, the outpost's fuel tanks were vented into the void. No one was killed, but every ship in that sector ground to a halt. The second target was a communications relay. Human hackers broke into its system, looping false messages for days, reports of phantom fleets, fake distress calls, and warnings of rogue factions inside Drelketh space. By the end of the week, 6 Drelketh trade convoys had vanished without a single battle. Some had been redirected into asteroid fields by false navigation data. Others had been boarded by humans wearing stolen pirate colors. Their cargo taken, but their crews released unharmed. Every incident pointed to someone different. No one could prove humans were behind it. Back on the station, Mara reviewed the reports. In her quarters, her heart was steady, but her mind was burning with thoughts. This was working faster than she had expected. The Drelketh were moving ships from their borders to protect their food routes. That left their outer colonies exposed. Jonah entered without knocking. His face was tense. "You've seen the latest reports?" "Yes," she said. He leaned on the table, lowering his voice. "There's more. The Drelketh just accused the Ruvathi of raiding their convoys." The Ruvathi ambassador stormed out of the council chamber. "They're about to pull trade support from the Drelketh." Mara's lips curved in a small smile. "Good. Let them fight among themselves. Every friend they lose makes them weaker." Jonah shook his head. "You're tearing the alliance apart, Mara. Not just them. Everyone." She looked at him, her expression hard. The alliance was already broken, Jonah. They just didn't see it. Arcadia showed me that. For a long moment, neither spoke. The distant hum of the station filled the silence. Jonah finally said, "In the far reaches of Drelketh space, a grain convoy failed to arrive at its destination. The colony waiting for the shipment had only enough food for 2 weeks. At first, the Dominion leaders told the people not to worry. More supplies were coming. But those supplies never came. Then, a mining world in the outer belt lost its fuel shipment. Without fuel, the giant machines that dug deep into the planet's crust went silent. Workers sat in the dark tunnels, waiting for orders that never arrived. Everywhere, the Drelketh began to feel a hunger they had never known." On the human station, Captain Marakeen read the reports without expression. Her team had moved like shadows, striking supply lines and vanishing before anyone could react. No one had been killed, but the Drelketh were bleeding in a way that could not be healed quickly. Jonah Rios sat across from her in the dim command room. "It's spreading," he said quietly, "faster than we expected. There's panic in some of their colonies. We even heard of riots." Mara didn't look up from the reports. "That's the point." Jonah hesitated. "And the Ruvathi. They've cut off all trade with the Drelketh. Publicly they say it's because of the convoy raids. Privately, she allowed herself a small smile. Privately, they're asking if we can do the same thing to their enemies." Jonah's eyes narrowed. "This is dangerous, Mara. You're not just hurting the Drelketh. You're showing the whole alliance that humans can topple anyone without firing a shot. You think they'll respect that?" "No," Mara said simply. "They'll fear it, and fear lasts longer than respect." Far away, in Drelketh space, the Dominion High Council was falling apart. The great chamber, with its black stone walls and glowing red banners, was filled with shouts. "They are attacking us," one warlord roared, slamming his clawed hand against the table. "If the Alliance will not defend us, then we should take matters into our own hands and risk breaking the Pax Concordia." Another leader spat. "If we declare war without proof, we invite destruction. They are already destroying us." The arguments went on for hours. No one agreed on the enemy's identity. Some said it was the humans. Others blamed pirates, rebels, or even rival Drelketh factions. The truth hid in the shadows, wearing many masks. Back on the station, Mara stood by the large viewport, looking out at the swirling stars. She remembered the faces of Arcadia farmers, engineers, children chasing each other through the market square. She remembered the last image from the colony's distress signal, a burst of static, then silence. Jonah came to stand beside her. I heard the Valery ambassador confronted the Drael Keth in the council chamber today. Demanded proof they weren't behind the Arcadia attack. Mara's lips curved slightly. Good. The more doubt we spread, the weaker they become. Jonah's voice was low. And when they break, what then? You think the council will thank us? They'll see us as dangerous. They'll unite against us. Mara finally looked at him. Her eyes were steady, but there was a shadow in them. If they unite, Jonah, at least they'll be united for a reason. That matters. That night, the strike teams hit a new target. Not food, not fuel, but trust. In a quiet sector near the border, a Drael Keth military depot went dark. The guards awoke to find every weapons locker empty. No alarms had been triggered. No battle had been fought. It was as if the weapons had vanished into thin air. The next day, those same weapons appeared on the black market in a dozen different systems, sold under false names. Some were traced to pirates. Others ended up in the hands of minor factions, with grudges against the Drael Keth. It was chaos, but not the kind the Pax Concordia could stop. The changes spread faster than Mara had imagined. By the third week, the Drael Keth were pulling fleets from their borders to guard their inner worlds. That left their frontier colonies exposed, and soon, those colonies began falling to old enemies. Small forgotten species, who had once been crushed under Drael Keth rule, now rose again, sensing weakness. None of them knew the humans had opened the door. On the human station, Mara's team worked in shifts, tracking every ripple of the chaos they had unleashed. Maps shifted daily. Supply lines disappeared. Alliances shifted like sand. But Jonah saw something else in the reports. Something. Mara didn't speak of. The chaos wasn't just hurting the Drael Keth. It was making the entire alliance unstable. Worlds that had once trusted the Pax Concordia were beginning to doubt it. One evening, Jonah found Mara alone in the command room, the lights low, her face lit by the glow of the holographic map. You can't control this anymore, he said, quietly. It's bigger than your plan now. Mara didn't answer right away. She stared at the map, watching red lines vanish. Green zones turn yellow. I didn't start this to control it, she said finally. I started it to make sure no one forgets Arcadia. Jonah shook his head. You're making sure no one forgets humans, and that might be even more dangerous. Mara turned to look at him, her voice calm but unyielding. Then they'll remember exactly what happens when someone comes for us. Far away, in a small Drael Keth outpost, a young officer stared at a secret report. It detailed dozens of mysterious strikes, all pointing to one conclusion: humans. He closed the file, his scaled hands trembling. If it was true, then humanity had done something no one in the Alliance had ever dared to do. They had fought a war without fighting at all, and they were winning. Asterisk. The council chamber was louder than usual. Alien voices rose in sharp tones, arguments bouncing off the high silver walls. The great ring of crystals above glowed in fast, uneasy patterns. It was clear the Alliance was nervous. At the center, Council Leader Vera tapped her, glass-like wings for silence. Order, she said, though the tension in her voice betrayed her. Reports show multiple Drael Keth supply lines have failed. Colonies are in distress, but the evidence of who is responsible remains unclear. The Drael Keth ambassador slammed his clawed hand on the desk. Unclear. Half our fleets are chasing shadows. Pirates strike at will. Convoys vanish without trace. And now the Ruvathi accuse us of aggression. The Ruvathi delegate, tall and pale with eyes like molten silver, stood. You raided our convoys first. We have proof. Lies. The Drael Keth snapped. The chamber erupted into noise again. From her seat, Captain Mara Keen watched without speaking. Her hands rested calmly on the table, but her mind was sharp, listening to every word. She knew the truth. None of this chaos came from pirates or random raids. It was the shadow her people had cast, growing longer by the day. Across from her, Commander Jonah Rios shifted uncomfortably. The accusations were spreading faster now. Even neutral species were turning on each other, convinced their neighbors were secretly behind the attacks. Council leader Vera's wings glittered as she spoke again. We must form a joint task force to investigate. If this threat continues, the stability of the alliance will be at risk. The Veilry ambassador turned his deep ocean eyes on Mara. Perhaps the humans would be willing to lead such an investigation. After all, you have experience with unpredictable enemies. Jonah's head snapped toward him, but Mara only gave a small, controlled smile. We'd be honored to help, she said. The council moved a vote, and Mara felt a strange mix of satisfaction and caution. They had just given her permission to move freely under the banner of investigation, exactly what she needed. Hours later, in the human command room, the lights were low, the air heavy with quiet. Mara stood over the holographic map as her strike team leaders gathered. They're inviting us to chase ourselves, Jonah said dryly. Exactly, Mara replied, which means we can move into places they wouldn't normally let us go. The council just handed us access to every Dralket sector without suspicion. A young pilot, Ensign Vale, leaned forward. Captain, how much longer can we keep this up before they figure it out? Mara studied the map. Red supply lines were disappearing faster than ever. Yellow warning zones blinked across the board. As long as it takes, she said. But now we change our approach. Fewer strikes on supplies, more strikes on trust. Jonah frowned. Trust? She zoomed in on a neutral trade hub at the edge of Dralketh space. These hubs run on reputation. If a merchant believes a partner might betray them, they stop dealing. We make the Dralketh look untrustworthy to everyone they do business with. We plant false cargo. We leak fake messages. We let their friends doubt them. Vale gave a low whistle. Captain, that's cold. It's not war, Mara said softly. It's survival. The next week, rumors began to spread like fire. A respected Dralketh trading house was caught smuggling illegal weapons into Alliance space. The proof was false, a set of forged logs and doctored security footage. But it was convincing enough to make 3 of their biggest partners cut ties. A Dralketh military transport was found drifting near a restricted system, its cargo hold empty. Official reports claimed pirates had struck, but the whisper in the markets said the transport had been delivering stolen food. None of it could be traced to humans. But while the shadows spread, the net began to tighten, not around the Dralketh, but around Mara. One evening, Jonah entered her office with a sealed datapad. You need to see this, he said, placing it on her desk. Mara tapped it open. The file showed movement reports for the Council's internal security ships. Several were now stationed closer to human fleets. Others had been spotted shadowing human freighters. They're watching us, Jonah said quietly. Mara leaned back in her chair. Good, that means we. The first sign of trouble came quietly, like a whisper in the dark. 2 of the human strike teams didn't report in on time. Their transponders, always set to send a hidden pulse every 6 hours, went silent. At first, Captain Mara Keen thought it was just a comms delay, but by the second day, her instincts told her otherwise. In the dim command room, the map glowed with empty space where their signals should have been. Jonah Rios stood beside her, his jaw tight. They're not late, he said. They're gone. Mara's eyes stayed on the map. The Dralketh are learning. Far away, deep in Dralketh space, a new player had entered the game. His name was Varish, a shadow operative for the Dominion, part spy, part assassin, trained to hunt threats that didn't fight like armies. His skin was black-scaled, his eyes a cold yellow that seemed to see in every direction at once. didn't care about the Pax Concordia. He didn't care about the Council's rules. His orders were simple: find whoever was tearing the Dominion apart, and end them. He studied the strike patterns, the false trails, the way the raids seemed to happen without witnesses. He noticed something no one else had, the same kind of false signals appearing across different sectors, the same style of sabotage. It was a signature, and signatures could be followed, on the human station. Mara called an emergency meeting in the secured briefing room. Her senior operatives sat around the table, the air tense. "We've lost 2 teams," she said, "and I believe more will be targeted soon. Whoever's doing this knows how we operate." Vale, the young pilot, shifted uneasily. "Do you think?" "It's the Council." "No," Mara said. "The Council wouldn't risk open violation of the Pax Concordia. This is someone who can move without leaving a trail, which means Drell Keth intelligence." Jonah spoke up. "Then they're not just reacting, they're hunting us." Mara nodded. "Which means we turn the hunt around." That night, the station's hangar bay came alive. Mara's special crew prepared a small stealth ship, black hull, heat dampeners, no beacon. It was designed for slipping past patrols, but tonight, it would be bait. Jonah looked over the ship as technicians worked. "You're going out yourself?" "Yes," Mara said. "That's insane," Jonah replied. "If you get caught, they won't catch me." Her tone was sharp, but calm. "They think they're following our trail. I'll give them one to follow, straight into a trap." Jonah stared at her for a long moment, then finally nodded. "Then I'm coming with you." The trap was set in the Ghost Belt, a stretch of dead asteroids and shattered moons, where navigation signals bent and echoes made it impossible to tell friend from foe. Mara's ship drifted there, cold and silent, pretending to be damaged. In the blackness beyond, a faint glimmer moved, the shadow of Varesh's ship. He had taken the bait inside her cockpit. Mara watched his approach on passive sensors. "He's good," she whispered. "Doesn't give off any signature until he's almost on us." Jonah's hands hovered over the manual controls. "You're sure this will work?" "We'll know in a minute," she said. Varesh's ship slipped closer, like a predator gliding through water. His scanners confirmed the human craft was powered down, running on minimal life support. Easy prey. He moved into position, deploying a boarding claw. The claw extended, magnetic tips reaching for the human hull. That was when Mara's ship came alive. Engines roared, shields flared, and the claw was yanked sideways by a sudden burst of counterthrust. The stealth ship spun, and Mara's weapons locked onto Varesh's position. But Varesh was fast. He cut power and let his ship drift, avoiding the targeting lock. Then he fired a short burst of plasma that grazed Mara's shields. Inside the cockpit, Jonah swore. "He's not running, he's testing us." "Then let's give him something to think about," Mara said, firing a cluster of decoys. The decoys scattered, each giving off a human engine signature. In the Ghost Belt, that was like throwing a dozen shadows at once. Varesh paused. He could chase one, but which one was real? His eyes narrowed. He fired on 2 decoys, destroying them, but by the time he turned, Mara's ship was gone, slipping deeper into the belt. Hours later, back at the station, Mara replayed the encounter on the holoscreen. She zoomed in on the moments before Varesh broke off. "This one isn't like the others," she said. "He's disciplined. He knows when not to push." Jonah folded his arms. "And he's still out there." Mara's gaze hardened. "Good. That means the game isn't over. We'll see who learns faster." But Varesh wasn't the only threat. In the council chamber the next day, new whispers spread. Several ambassadors had begun to ask why human fleets were appearing in so many sectors hit by the mysterious raids. No accusations yet, just questions. But questions had a way of growing teeth. Mara felt the weight of those whispers as she sat in her seat, watching the Drelketh ambassadors speak with forced calm. They were hiding their anger, waiting for proof. She wondered how much longer she could stay ahead of them all. That night, alone in her quarters, Mara sat at her desk, staring at the star map. The lines she had erased from Draelketh's space were many, but each one had cost her something: a risk taken, a life put in danger, a step closer to exposure. She thought of Arcadia again. The green fields, the children in the market, the sky over the lake at sunset. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Not one more, not ever again." In the darkness, she knew the lines in the stars were closing in, and somewhere out there, Varish was still following. The summons came in the middle of the night cycle. A quiet tone echoed through Captain Marakeen's quarters, followed by the cold voice of the station AI. "Captain Keen, you are requested by the Galactic Council. Immediate attendance required." She sat up slowly, her stomach already tightening. This wasn't a normal meeting. The Council never called humans in at such an hour, unless something had shifted, and usually, it wasn't in their favor. The Council chamber was a place built to impress and intimidate. Towering walls of silver glass rose above a circular table, each seat filled with an ambassador from a different species. The room was lit with pale blue light that gave everyone's skin a strange, almost sickly glow. Mara stepped inside. All eyes turned to her. The Draelketh ambassador, High Speaker Varshan, leaned forward, his scaled hands pressed together. His voice was smooth, but there was steel underneath. "Captain Keen, we have troubling reports. 2 Draelketh military depots destroyed in the last week. Both without warning, both with no survivors." Mara kept her face calm. "I've heard of these incidents. Terrible losses." "Terrible, yes," Varshan said, "and strange. For in both cases, long-range scans detected human craft in the vicinity." The words hung in the air like a knife over her head. Jonah Rios was watching from the observation deck above, his fists clenched against the rail. He wanted to shout, to defend her, but this was her fight. If he spoke now, it would only prove the Council's suspicions. Another voice broke the silence. "Counselor Terra of the Colin. The Pax Concordia forbids war. But war is not the only kind of violence, is it, Captain? These surgical attacks, they have the smell of human ingenuity." Mara's lips tightened. "With respect, Counselor, I am not responsible for every ship with a human crew. You know as well as I do that the border is full of independent traders and mercenaries." Varshan's yellow eyes glowed faintly. Perhaps the humans have found a way to wage war without calling it war. The Council voted to open an investigation. It wasn't an accusation yet, but Mara could feel the walls closing in. When she left the chamber, Jonah caught up to her in the corridor. "They're coming for you," he said quietly. "They'll dress it up in law and diplomacy, but they want you gone." "I know," she replied. Her voice was calm, but her hands were trembling. That same night, far from the station, Varish made his move. For days he had been shadowing a series of supply ships linked to the human strikes. Tonight, he finally saw his opening. A lone freighter drifting along a quiet trade lane. No escort, minimal shields. He slipped in behind it, invisible to its sensors. When he boarded, he expected frightened traders. Instead, he found a hidden armory, explosives, disruptor rifles, stealth drones, all human-made, in the middle of the cargo bay. A single crewman raised his hands in surrender. Varish stepped closer. "You are going to tell me everything about Captain Mara Keen." Back on the human station, Mara studied her latest reports in the command room. 3 targets left. 3 Draelketh systems, still coordinating military supply lines. She had the resources to cripple them all, but now every move risked exposure. Jonah entered, shutting the door behind him. "We might have a bigger problem than the Council," he said. She looked up. "How big?" "Big enough to have a name. Varish, Dominion, Hunter-Killer." The kind they send when they can't afford to lose. Mara leaned back slowly. So that's who's been on our trail? Jonah nodded. And I think he's close. 2 days later, the trap was sprung, but this time, not by Mara. The station shuddered under a sudden impact. Alarms blared. The lights cut out for half a second before emergency power came online. Breach in Dock 3, the AI announced. Mara and Jonah raced down the corridor, weapons drawn. Smoke filled the docking bay, thick and acrid. Through the haze, a tall, black-scaled figure emerged. Vorish. He didn't fire immediately. He simply stood there, scanning the room, his voice low and precise. Captain Keen, I've been looking for you. The standoff lasted only seconds, but it felt like an eternity. You've been hunting my people. Captain Mara Keen stood in the command deck of the Silent Hawk, the flagship of her human strike team. The map in front of her glowed softly, marking the last 3 Drelketh systems that still had functioning supply lines. After weeks of chaos, these were the veins still pumping life into a machine already reeling. Jonah Rios leaned over the console, voice low. After this, Mara, there's no turning back. If the council finds out, they'll call it open defiance. Mara's gaze didn't waver from the map. Then we make sure it's impossible for anyone to ignore. The Drelketh must collapse completely before they can recover, and we finish without firing a traditional shot. The first strike targeted a food processing world, its orbit dotted with massive factory stations. Mara's team approached under the guise of a civilian supply convoy. Sensors showed heavy patrols, but Mara had accounted for them. Stealth drones online, she said. The crew activated the invisible swarms, slipping past patrols like shadows. They released cargo pods filled with false instructions, sending factory ships on impossible routes that would crash or get lost in the asteroid rings. Jonah watched the holographic display as production lines ground to a halt. No one's dying, he said. And yet, billions of meals vanish. Exactly, Mara replied softly. This is worse than war. Nobody knows who's attacking, and everyone loses trust in their own people. The second strike was more delicate. A central communications hub controlled messages to dozens of colonies. Mara's hackers went to work, implanting loops of false reports, fake attack warnings, and phantom pirate raids. The hub's logs now showed evidence of Drelketh corruption and secret deals with rogue factions. When the falsified alerts hit the colonies, panic spread. Governors debated evacuations. Supply convoys were recalled or destroyed by mistrust. Even the Ruvathi began questioning their alliance with the Drelketh. Mara's fingers hovered over the console. Look at that, she whispered. Every world is turning without a single shot fired. Every ally doubts the Dominion. They're breaking themselves. Jonah exhaled, voice tight. It's terrifying and brilliant. But while they were executing the last strike, Varish found them. He emerged from the shadows of an uncharted system, his black-scaled ship, a specter in the void. Mara's sensors blinked a signature she recognized immediately. He's here, Jonah said, tense. All at once. Mara didn't flinch. Then we show him why humans fight differently. She initiated evasive maneuvers, slipping the Silent Hawk into a field of dense asteroid debris. Varish followed, undeterred, scanning every crevice for movement. Inside his ship, Varish's mind raced. He had tracked humans before, but none had moved with this level of calculation. Every decoy, every false signal, every vanished freighter. It was as if Mara could think a dozen steps ahead. The last strike was the most daring, a Drelketh orbital fuel depot, critical to all their fleets. Mara's team needed to disable it without anyone seeing them. She gave the orders calmly. We plant the EMP cores here and here. She pointed to the holographic schematics. Then we trigger them remotely once everyone is distracted. Jonah hesitated. If Varish finds out before we trigger it, he won't, Mara said. Her eyes glimmered with resolve. Not until It's too late. In the asteroid field, the final confrontation began. Varish fired a warning shot, plasma streaking past the Silent Hawk. Mara's crew launched decoys, creating phantom fleets, and fired signal jammers. The shadows multiplied, confusion rippling through the battlefield. Varish realized the humans were not just running, they were orchestrating an entire illusion of movement, spreading themselves across sectors without ever being in one place at once. He swore under his breath. Impossible, he muttered. Meanwhile, Mara activated the EMP cores at the fuel depot. Across Dralketh space, lights flickered, engines died, and fleets came to a sudden halt. Fuel lines ruptured, shipments froze mid-orbit, and for the first time, the Dominion had no way to move their forces efficiently. Back on the station, the Council received the reports. Panic and confusion filled the chamber. No one could understand how the strikes happened, who had done them, or how the Dralketh had been so thoroughly paralyzed. Some whispered the humans had finally broken the rules of war entirely. Others feared what humans might do next. Mara and Jonah watched the newsfeed silently. Jonah broke the quiet. We did it. 3 strikes, and not a life lost. Except for the food supply. Mara's expression was solemn. Worse than war. That's what the Council didn't allow. That's why humans are feared. That's why we survive. In the shadows, Varish pulled his ship back. He studied the human strategies, the complex coordination, the way Mara's team turned every threat into a weapon of doubt and panic. He realized something he hadn't expected. Humans were not predictable. They did not respond to threats like other species. They adapted. They invented new rules in the middle of conflict, bending the battlefield itself. For the first time, Varish felt respect. But respect did not mean surrender. The hunt was not over, yet the humans had already claimed the field without a single battle in the traditional sense. Later, Mara stood on the observation deck, looking out at the galaxy. The stars stretched endlessly, countless worlds spinning in silence. She thought of Arcadia, of the lives lost to the Dralketh, of the power of a human mind when backed by courage and unity. Jonah came beside her. Do you think they'll ever forgive us? Mara shook her head. Forgiveness is not the point. Survival is. And if anyone threatens humans again, they will remember exactly what we can do. She smiled faintly, looking at the distant lights of Dralketh colonies, now frozen in logistical paralysis. For now, she whispered, the galaxy will remember. Humanity. The Council had grown restless. For weeks, they had watched the reports. Come in, disrupted fleets, paralyzed supply lines, panic spreading through Dralketh colonies. Every attempt to trace the strikes back to humans had failed. Every probe, every investigation, only led to more confusion. Finally, Counselor Terra slammed her clawed hand onto the conference table. Enough, she shouted. These humans are destabilizing the entire alliance. If we do not act now, the Pax Concordia will collapse. We must intervene directly. Vera, the council leader, nodded. Agreed. Captain Mara Keen must be brought under direct supervision. Effective immediately, all human operations are subject to council oversight. The room hummed with tension. Every ambassador understood the stakes. If humans resisted, the consequences could be catastrophic for both sides. Back on the human station, Mara sensed the change immediately. Sensors were being scanned more frequently. Her crew felt the weight of unseen eyes. Alerts pinged constantly, reporting inspections, patrols, and fleet movements. Jonah Rios crossed the command deck, his voice low. They're watching everything, every ship, every move we make. Mara didn't flinch. Then we adapt. That's what humans do. Varish, still tracking Mara's team, sensed the shift too. The Council's fleets were converging. Ships from multiple species now moved in formation near the sectors she operated in. He knew this hunt had changed. No longer was he just a shadow in the dark. Now he was part of a fleet, with orders to corner Mara and end the human threat. But Varish hesitated. He respected her. Every tactic she had used, every move she made, was precise, intelligent, and unexpected. He realized that the humans had a weapon even he couldn't fully measure: ingenuity. Mara convened her team in the central briefing room. "The council is moving in," she said calmly. "They'll try to restrict our operations. They'll try to trap us. We need a plan that keeps us one step ahead." Ensign Vale frowned. "Captain, that means direct confrontation with the council fleets. They have numbers, firepower." Mara held up a hand. "And we have their trust. Not their love, not their approval, but their fear of losing control. That's enough." Jonah shook his head. "We're playing a dangerous game. One misstep, and the entire alliance will turn on us." Mara's gaze hardened. "Then we make the misstep on our terms." The first move was subtle. Mara sent out a fleet of supply ships with holographic decoys and false transponder signals. Every ship seemed identical. Every fleet movement seemed routine. But beneath the surface, the ships were ready. Each carried EMP disruptors, jamming devices, and stealth drones. They were not meant to attack, not yet. They were meant to manipulate. As predicted, Council forces moved to intercept what they thought was Mara's fleet. Scanners detected unusual readings. Suspicion grew. Communications were jammed, delaying orders. The Council had stepped into the trap. Meanwhile, Varish closed in on Mara's actual ship. He fired a warning pulse, a signal the human ship could not ignore. Mara responded, not with weapons, but with strategy. She led Varish on a chase through a dense asteroid field. Every turn, every diversion, was calculated. Decoys flickered across. Sensors. Ships disappeared and reappeared in impossible locations. Varish realized she wasn't just running. She was teaching the Council fleet how to chase ghosts. Every move he made was anticipated. Every strategy he employed was neutralized. Inside her cockpit, Mara whispered, "This is human thinking, Varish. Not power, not violence, thinking." The final strike was the most daring yet. A central Drael Keth fleet depot. The heart of their supply lines waited in orbit around a mineral-rich moon. Mara's team moved in silently. They didn't destroy the depot. Instead, they planted a network of decoys, falsified data, and hidden. The Council had moved openly. Dozens of fleets from every major species converged on the sectors Marakeen had operated in. The Drael Keth were in chaos. Neutral systems were watching, unsure which side to support, and somewhere in the shadows, Varish, the Dominion hunter, followed her silently, waiting for the perfect moment. But Mara's eyes were calm. She had expected this day. Every move she had made, every strike she had planned, led to this final confrontation. In the command deck of the Silent Hawk, Mara addressed her team. "This is it. The Council wants to stop us. They think fleets and fleets of ships will change. The outcome, they are wrong." Jonah Rios leaned over her console. "How do you stop fleets that outnumber us 10-1? Mara smiled faintly. "We don't stop them. We make them doubt themselves." Her fingers danced across the controls. Holographic projections displayed the positions of Council ships, tracking every movement. Mara's strategy was simple and brilliant. "Deploy the final decoys," she ordered. "Activate the communication scramblers. Let them see ghosts everywhere. Let them hear attacks that never happened." In the sectors surrounding the Drael Keth depots, confusion spread like wildfire. Holosignals of human fleets appeared in multiple locations simultaneously. False distress calls, fake attacks, even staged conversations between phantom human commanders made the Council's fleets chase shadows. Ships collided, misfired, and redirected each other into safe zones. Every order from the Council was delayed. Their forces became tangled in the very systems they had hoped to control. Varish followed Mara's actual ship, silent and tense. He realized she had orchestrated the perfect illusion. It was not brute force, not sheer firepower. It was human cunning, courage, and timing. He activated his long-range sensors, trying to find a true target. Nothing appeared. Mara's ship moved like a ghost, impossible to track, impossible to corner. He muttered to himself, "They fight differently. Not like soldiers, not like warriors, like humans." For the first time, he felt admiration, even fear. The final strike was in motion. A central energy relay controlled Drillketh fleet movements across multiple systems. Mara's team inserted a network of remote EMP nodes and misdirection drones. Once activated, the relays would transmit false signals to every fleet in Drillketh's space. The moment came, Mara triggered the sequence. Across hundreds of light years, the signal scrambled ships, rerouted supply convoys, and created phantom fleets that appeared to strike everywhere at once. The Drillketh fleets halted. The Council's forces faltered. Panic rippled through the alliance. Jonah exhaled, gripping Mara's shoulder. "It's done. They can't stop it." Mara's eyes stayed on the stars. "They don't understand yet, but soon they will." On the observation deck of the station, Mara finally faced Varish in person. He stood across from her, calm but tense, his scaled arms crossed. "You've done the impossible," he said quietly. "The Council can't catch you. The fleets can't stop you. You've rewritten what war means." Mara nodded. "That's the point. Humans survive. Humans adapt. Humans fight in ways no one expects." Varesh's yellow eyes narrowed. "And yet, you have a choice now. I could end this. We could hand you over to the Council." She smiled faintly. "And what would that prove? That humans surrender?" "No, it proves nothing." He hesitated. Then slowly, almost reluctantly, he stepped back. "Then, I watch. Learn. Perhaps one day, the galaxy will understand humans. Until then, you win this round." The Council convened again. Reports flooded in, fleets immobilized, depots paralyzed, supply lines frozen. They could trace the disruption, but they could not find a single human responsible. Not a fleet, not a command, not a weapon fired. Counselor Terra's wings fluttered in frustration. "Impossible. This defies everything we know about conflict. No species could achieve this without total destruction." Vera, the Council leader, shook her head. "And yet, it happened. Humanity has survived. Humanity has triumphed. And worse, they did it without breaking the alliance itself." Back on the station, Mara looked at her team. Exhausted, tense, but alive. Every face reflected the same pride and relief. Jonah smiled. "You did it, Mara. The galaxy won't forget this." She looked out at the stars, distant worlds twinkling. Silently, "They will remember," she said. "Not because of power, not because of weapons, but because humans never give up. Humans never quit. And humans always find a way." Vale, the young pilot, whispered, almost to himself, "They're going to be scared of us now." Mara's smile widened, but it was not cruel. It was quiet, proud, unstoppable. "Good. Let them be." And somewhere far away, in the void, Varish watched silently. He realized the truth he could not deny. Humans were not just survivors, not just clever strategists. They were something different. Something no council, no fleet, no alien force could ever fully measure. They were unpredictable. They were fearless. They were human. Mara closed her eyes for a moment, breathing in the calm after the storm. She thought of Arcadia, of her people, of the countless worlds, now safe from tyranny and doubt. Then, looking out across the galaxy, she whispered a final declaration to every star, every fleet, every observer.